Hello everyone, welcome back. We're looking at another pre-recorded video. In today's video, we're looking at the Central Division. We're looking at how I predicted last year, how did it go compared to how the standings were actually last year, and we're looking at how my predictions are at this current point in time for this upcoming season. We'll go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another pre-recorded video here at the Nintendo Hockey channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. We're nearly with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, and don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so we can all discuss in this video. Now, just like the last one when we talked about the Pacific Division, we're going to be looking at the Central Division here. So basically, we're going to be looking at how we predicted our Central Division in the preseason last year, how it actually went last year, and my current projections for this upcoming 24-25 season for the Central Division. So last year, I'll put a picture up of it, how I predicted the Central Division to go right up on the screen. If you want me to just tell you guys this, I currently had Dallas at the preseason last year being a top team in the Central Division with 114 points. That was followed by Colorado, who had 110. That was followed by Minnesota, who had third with 96. Nashville, I had fourth with 91. Now, we only had 3 teams make it to the playoffs from the Central Division last year, at least in the preseason. I had Arizona be an 89-point team last year and be 5th in the Central. The Jets be 88 points and be 6th in the Central. I had the Blues be 7th in the Central, 79 points, and the Hawks 8th in the Central, 71 points. So let's go see how I did last year's standings to how they actually finished. So I had Dallas win the Central Division last year. That prediction came true, but I was only 1 point off Dallas to win the Central Division, so I was actually really good on that prediction. Dallas finished the season with a 52-21-9 record, 113 points, which is only one lower than I predicted them. So I consider that a complete win. Now, the Jets wound up finishing 2nd in the Central Division last year with 110 points. That one was one where I had quite a bit off. I expected them to be around the playoff mark, just maybe making it in. I had them being out of the playoffs. They wound up surpassing my point total by 22 points. So I was way off in the Winnipeg Jets. Completely misread them last year. So I definitely took an L on that one. That one was one that I was way off on. Third overall last year in the Central Division was the Colorado Avalanche. Finished the season with 107 points for 3rd in the Central. I was actually quite close. I predicted them to be 2nd in the Central with 110 points. So I was only 3 points off. If I can get within 4 points, either up or down, I consider that a win. If I can get within 1 placement position, either up or down, I consider that a win. So the fact that I only got them 1 off where they finished in 3rd, and I only got them 3 points off, I consider that a win. So it was pretty close to where the Avalanche were. 4th overall in the Central last year was Nashville. They made the playoffs with 99 points. I expected them to be right on the edge of making the playoffs. They were, but they did a little bit better than I was expecting. Like I said, I originally had them at a 91-point team, 4th in the Central. So they were 4th in the Central. I did get their placement completely right, but they were not a 91-point team. They were a 99-point team. So it was 8 points lower than what they originally were. So that was an interesting pickup there, but I at least got their placement right. Next, at 5th overall was the St. Louis Blues last year. Finished with a record of 92 points. That was actually a pretty good season there for the Blues, just missed out in the playoffs, but if they were in the Eastern Conference, would have made the playoffs. So that's interesting switch up there. They did finish a little bit higher than I expected them. I expected them to be 7th in the Central at 79 points. So I predicted them 13 points lower than what they actually were and 2 places lower. So I was a little bit off in the St. Louis Blues. On top of that, next up we had the 6th overall Minnesota Wild, who finished the season with 87 points. They wound up being 6th in the Central Division. That's a little bit off of where I had them. I originally had them being 96 points, and I had them being 3rd in the Central, so I was way off. I thought it would be a playoff team, but probably the best of the Central Divisions that weren't Dallas or Colorado, and they wound up finishing way lower than I thought. Only 9 points lower, so it wasn't an overly egregious wrong pick, but they did finish 3 spots lower than I originally had them in the Central, so interesting note there. At 7th in the Central, we had the Arizona Coyotes. They wound up finishing with 77 points, and had the Arizona Coyotes not gone that 14-game losing streak in the middle of the season that really hindered their season, maybe they would have gone where I predicted them, which was 5th in the Central Division at 89 points. I think they would have been a lot closer to a playoff spot had they not gone that long losing streak, and we're looking really good throughout the first half of the season, but that losing streak did hinder them, and I did predict them 12 points higher than what they actually were, and I also predicted them 2 spots higher than what they actually were, so I'll take the L on that one too. I did predict the Hawks to be the lowest in the Central. That was correct. Last year, the Hawks finished with a point total of 52 points, and I did not predict them to go that low. I predicted them to be last in the Central, but just not that low of a team. I had them finishing with 71 points, so I was 19 points higher than what they actually did. So interesting note there, but I was way off on the Hawks. So I got the Hawks placement right, I got the Preds placement right, I got the Stars placement right, and I got the Avalanche within 1 placement spot. So I'm happy happy with getting those 4 within a reasonable amount for the Central Division. I also did not do too bad on the Dallas, only within 1 point, on Colorado within 3 points. So it's good to see I got those teams within a decent amount of points of what they actually finished, but for the most part, the Central Division was a really hard division to predict, and I did get a lot of things wrong. So interesting note there. Now, going over to my current projected point total for the Central Division for this upcoming season. So, at first overall, I don't think it's any surprise. I'm predicting Dallas to win the Central Division again. That was right last year. Hopefully it'll be right again this year. Last year, they finished with a really good record. I've been taking a slight step back. I've been finishing with a record of 51-22-9 for 111 points. 2 points lower than last year, so I don't think it's going to be too much of a difference than last year. Made some interesting moves this offseason. They added guys like Matt Dumba, like Ilya Bushkin. They also added a couple of other guys, moved on from a guy like Rak Faksa, moved on from a guy like Teledelandria, also moved on from Chris Tanev. So they did make some interesting moves. I'm not sure if they got a whole bunch better. Lost Joe Pavelski to retirement too, so it might be a slight bit worse, but I still expect them to be a really good team in the Central Division next year. At second overall in the Central Division this upcoming season, I have a little bit of a surprise. I have the Nashville Predators. I have them taking that next step, that leap, after making out some really good offseason additions, adding Stamkos, adding Marchessault, adding Brady Shea. They did really good this year in the addition category, and I have them being second in the Central Division. I have them finishing with a record of 50-25-7, 407 points, 8 higher than last year. So I think they're going to be a much better team than they were last year. I think they can compete for the first spot in the Central. Don't think they will get there, but I think they're going to be a really good team. When it goes to third overall in the Central Division, I have the Colorado Avalanche. I expect them to fall a little bit than they were last year, but not too much, and I expect them to still be a top 3 team in the Central, finishing with a record of 46-27-9 for 101 points. 8 points lower than last year. So I don't expect them to be too much lower than where they were last year, but I do expect them to take a tiny step back. So that's where I currently have the Colorado Avalanche, finishing third in the Central Division with 101 points. Fourth in the Central Division, I currently have the Utah franchise. I think they did enough last past year, adding Sergachev, adding Marino, adding some decent forwards like Stenlund. So interesting note there, they've made a lot of interesting additions, and I think they're going to take a huge step next year. They don't have the arena situation anymore hanging over their heads, so I have them finishing with a record of 40-29-13 for 93 points, 16 higher than last year, and I have them making this playoffs as the second wildcard team. So I do have 4 teams out of the Central Division making the playoffs this year, and I think Utah is going to be a really good fit in the Central Division after being relocated from Arizona. So I think Utah made some really good moves this offseason. I think they're going to do a whole bunch better, and it would not surprise me if they were a team who made the playoffs. Fifth overall in the Central Division this year, I have the Minnesota Wild. I also have them taking a little bit of a step forward, not enough to make the playoffs. I do still have them missing the playoffs. Could wind up making the playoffs, but at this point in time, I do have them missing. I have them finishing with a record of 42-34-6 for 90 points, 3 higher than last year, but still just a couple of points out of playoff spots. So I don't think they're going to be doing too badly this year, but I do think they're still going to miss the playoffs. So that's where I see the Minnesota Wild at this point in time. At 6th in the Central Division, I have the Winnipeg Jets. I have them taking a major step back. Didn't do too much this offseason. Added Kakinen, Comrie, lost a guy like Brossois. They also lost Dillon. They lost Monahan. They lost Toffoli. They added a couple of younger guys like Coughlin, Anderson Dolan. So didn't really make a whole bunch of moves. Didn't really improve off of what they did last year, and I think it's going to be really hard to replicate that defensive season they had last year. So at this point in time, I had them finishing with a record of 37-32-13. Still above 500 record, but I do have them missing the playoffs with 87 points, 23 points lower than last year. So I do have them taking a major step back. Wouldn't surprise me if they were able to sneak into a playoff spot, but at this point in time, I do think the Jets are poised to take a major step backwards. At 7th overall in the Central Division, I once again predicting the St. Louis Blues to finish there. Nothing against the Blues. I think they got a lot better this year. They add Broberg, they add Holloway, they don't really lose a whole bunch of things. They add Joseph on the forward group, Fox on the forward group, Texie on the forward group, move on from Kevin Hayes, move on from Marco Scandella. So not too much movement there from the St. Louis Blues, but I do think they got a little bit better. However, I am seeing them take a tiny step back just because of how many other teams got better in that Central Division. I have the St. Louis finishing with a record of 40-37-5 for 85 points, 7 lower than last year, just a hair behind the Winnipeg Jets. Only 8 out of a playoff spot, so I'm not thinking they're going to do too badly this year, but I do think the St. Louis Blues will find themselves once again on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoff mark. And at 8th overall, I do have the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, as much as they're going to be 8th in the Central Division, I currently have them being 13th in the Western Conference. I think they're going to take a major step forward, nowhere close to the playoffs at this point in time, but I do see them making a step forward and doing a lot better this year. I have them finishing with a record of 35-40-7 for 77 points, 25 higher than last year, still 8th in the Central Division, still even 8 points lower than St. Louis, which would be the next closest team, still way out of a playoff spot, but they're going to take a huge step forward. They're going to be a little more lethal this year, and they're going to surprise a lot of people by doing a lot better than a lot of people think. So in my opinion, once again, just to recap here, at this current point in time, I think that the Stars are going to remain the top team in Central Division with 111 points. I have Nashville second in the division with 108 points. I have the Avalanche still third in the division with 101 points. I have Utah fourth in the division with 93 points and making the playoffs as the last wildcard team. I have Minnesota being fifth in the division with 90 points. I have Winnipeg sixth in the division with 87 points. St. Louis seventh in the division with 85 points. And Chicago eighth in the division with 77 points. That's my current projection for the Central Division. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this down in the comment section below. What do you think about the Central Division this year? Can Dallas repeat as Central champs? Can the Hawks take some big steps forward? Can the Utah franchise take some big steps forward? Can Nashville take some big steps forward? Is Colorado poised for a huge step back? Is Winnipeg poised for a huge step back? Definitely, it's going to be interesting to see. And I definitely do think this is going to be an interesting season for the Central Division, one in which I think Utah might be able to sneak into a playoff spot. So that's what we're talking about for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. What's your opinion on the Central Division? And how do you think the predictions went last year in the preseason to how they did and finished at the end of last year? Definitely love to hear your thoughts on all of that. So I'm going to talk about for today. I'm going to like this video. If you'd like to subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. Would never be able to do this without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so we can all discuss in this video. I also do a blog, talk about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll leave a link down in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.